All right. Well, hello. My name is Michael Pucciarelli, and tonight I'll be talking about some new photography tools and also new Adobe tricks. And create some new tools out of stuff from wood or things I don't want to throw away. We'll first start with Adobe Camera Raw. The light, tab, where there are ways to work with shadows and highlights. And sometimes if you have like a bright sunny day, you can use like a negative 100 for the highlights and a plus 100 for the shadows. Or maybe depending on how much light, you could use like negative 50 for the highlights and plus 50 for the shadows. So you use the opposite reciprocal. And then the white and blacks, a lot of times I leave the blacks alone, but sometimes if there's too much white in a photograph, I use like a negative 10 or negative 20 or even a negative 30 to put a little more detail in the white to make it look more natural. Sometimes I can adjust the contrast between 5 and 10. I rarely ever change the exposure, maybe like 0.5, but a lot of times, I leave the exposure alone. For texture and clarity, I could use maybe +3. Vignette's great if you want to put some slight shade on the corners, or if there's a slight shade you don't want, you can erase it by putting in the white, so it'll take it out. There's a lot you can do with grain in Adobe Camera Raw, but I prefer, the filters in Photoshop. But the grain feature in Adobe Raw is pretty powerful also. And dehaze, if you want to have a unique kind of look, you can work with the dehaze. Temperature is a great way for mood color. If you want to move it to the left, more blue for more cooler, but then you want to move it to the right, to the green part for a warmer feel. And the vibration and saturation, I would only increase between 3 and 5. Vibration is great for increasing the richness of dull colors. Saturation is great for the rich colors, but sometimes in portraits, we can increase the vibrance by 3 or maybe 5 at most, but it all depends on what you want to do. And the same thing for, saturation. Tint is a great way for adding like a slight shade. Rarely we use the tint. A lot of times, maybe I'll just use the temperature or maybe the vibration. And, just slight adjustments. The geometry is great in Adobe Camera Raw. You can adjust angle up here. You can also play with the sliders on here. They're good, but a lot of times I just like to use the A. And then I like to do all the rest in Photoshop. But everybody has unique styles of editing. But a lot of times I use the A, but these are all effective tools. And the options up here are also good too. But A is the quickest. I create some new actions where basically I have 2 levels adjustments in a group. I'm dodging and burning both with the blend mode of soft light. So the dodging and burning is using the same blend mode of soft light. And I like to use an opacity of 10% or 50% for the brush. Depends on what looks more natural. And then I use a levels adjustment, which is right here for the contrast. And then I have 2 type layers. One with the white signature and one with the black signature of like my logo, my signature. And depending on the photograph, I delete one, whichever one looks better. But it starts out with before I deleted one type layer is white and one type layer is black. And I keep the one I like the most. And again, I like that create an action, call other actions. So I'm calling the action that says MFP white sig for the white signature and MFP black sig for the black signature. Then there's rectangular gradients, and this is great for trying to make the sky more interesting. And you can do a lot with this. You can play around the angle. You can use plus 90, negative 90, and you just double click on the square here, and this comes up. And the end can be adjusted. You could have it on the side. You could have it at a slant. And any color blend mode would help make this stand out really good and look really natural. This, action is great for improving the sky of a landscape photograph. Now we're going to talk about some settings where I said, this is just a tree I took with snow. I did negative 100 for the highlights, positive 100. So I use the same number, but the reciprocal. I didn't touch the blacks, and I also used negative 20 for the whites to make it look more natural. So I had to use a negative 6 for tints, 1600 for the temperature. I didn't want to touch the vibrance or saturation. And then I just used plus 3 for the texture and the clarity. And it looks pretty sharp. Here I did the same thing. I used negative 100 for the highlights, plus 100 for the shadows. And this time I decided to use a plus 14 for the contrast. I decided to use a cooler temperature, 4,300 for the temperature. I use a plus 14 for the tints. Decided to increase my vibration to 16 or 17 for the vibrance and saturation. And I use plus 3 for the texture and clarity. And this is taking with my R6. Here are the settings: aperture 16, 1/25th, ISO 100. If I jump back to here, this is taken with my R6, aperture 2.8. And the reason why I use a shutter of 1/60th because I wanted to get more ambient light in. And then I had to use ISO 400 because it was outside. Here I use aperture of 13, 1/125th. I decided to use ISO 100 because it was it was like a bright light out. This is a nice black. It is a black and white because I use an adjustment action to make it black and white. And the ISO is 100. And again, here I use negative 100 for the shadows. I didn't touch the contrast. I didn't touch the exposure. Then I use plus 100 for the shadows. And for the whites, I decided to jump all the way down to negative 36 to make it look good. I decided to give it a more cooler effect with the temperature of 4150. I didn't touch the tint, vibration, or saturation. Then I used plus 3 for the texture and clarity. And this is all in Adobe Camera Raw. Let's take it with my R5. Here's the settings: aperture 11 with 1/125th. Notice that the file is like twice as big as the preceding ones. The R5 has big file sizes. Because this is such a bright light, I had to use ISO 100. Again, the highlights is negative 100. The shadows is plus 100. The whites is negative 10. I rarely ever touch the black, so I left that at 0. I decided to use a more warmer effect. That's why my temperature is 7100. The tints, I liked it at 12. I didn't touch the vibrance. I didn't touch the saturation. And I used plus 3 for the texture and clarity. Now this is still like photography. This is using, Godox flashes. This is now inside the studio, where this is done with the R6. And I always want to use a low ISO of 100 inside the studio with flash. The settings, aperture rate, 1/125th. I want to use the same principle where I use -100 for the highlights, +100 for the shadows. So I have to use a -26 to make the light, the whites look better. I didn't touch the blacks. I decided to use like +8 as a tint for the effect. I left the try to maybe use a warmer feel with 6100 for the temperature. And texture and clarity, it's +3. This is done with the R5. If you look at the style size, it was twice as big as the preceding slide. ISO 100, aperture rate 1/125th. Here, I decided something a little different. I didn't touch the exposure. I didn't touch the contrast. Maybe I could increase the contrast. I decided not to. Again, use -100 for the highlights, +100 for the shadows. The whites, I decided to use -20 to make it look more natural. And the blacks, I decided to increase the blacks. I rarely touch the blacks, but I felt in this photograph it needed to have a black adjustment. Temperature was 6200, but the tint was 14 because I like the effect, the shady effect. I didn't touch the saturation. I didn't touch the vibrance. Let's use +3 for the texture and clarity. This done with my R5. It's a big file, so it's 41 meg. Then so 100, 1/125th as a shutter, then aperture 16. We use several, Godox 8000 Pro strobes. This time I decided to use the contrast of +12. And this time with the highlights, instead of -100, I used -50 for the highlights, +50 for the shadows. I didn't touch the blacks, but I used -20 for the whites to make it look natural. So I use a warmer feel, 6500 for the K, for the temperature. For a slight tint, I decided to use +7. I didn't want to touch a vibrance and saturation. And what I did in Adobe Photoshop, I used like a 50% opacity brush to bring this out, bring out the letters better. And basically I dodged and burned with the soft blend mode light, 50% brush with all this. And this came out good. Then I just used +3 for texture and clarity. But this is the final product. But this is the settings in Camera Raw. Now this is light painting, where I only worry about the white balance. I have a base shot and I have a gray card that I just set the white balance. I want to make sure that remove chromatic aberration and use profile corrections are checked off and make it look good with the colors, and it matches the color profile, the camera profile correction. You always want to make sure I have these checked. So these are I only worry about the white balance and the optics for light painting. I don't touch the temperature. I don't touch any of this. Now, there's some new Godox I decided to buy because my other ones are very big. I decided to buy the smaller soapboxes. These fit easier underneath a white plex table. I like to use the grid to make the light more flattering. You can fit a pocket flash easily on the other side. And here is the Godox bracket where you put the strip, you put the light in, and you attach the light to this bracket. And these are good. They're tough. They'll last a lifetime. White cards are great, and they're great for, you can cut them in size, you can fold them. You can have cool white backgrounds. You can have add light in a soft way to any type of still life photography, or even any photography that's inside a studio. Then there are gray cards where you could have these bigger. You can have a nice cool background. They'll add light in a very, even a softer way than a white card. You can also, neutralize your colors when you want to set the white balance. But a gray is a cool background. It's a good color to use. And basically, it's just foam board with gray art paper stapled on. And these are good tools for a very extremely soft light edition. Softer than the white card. Black cards are great. You can block on one light. You can create cool backgrounds. You can fold them. You can have them stand. You can cut them. And black cards come in all sizes. These are foam boards you could buy at a store like Plaza Arts or Michael's. These are my scrims where I made them bigger, but you don't have to use a stand. You can just rest them on a table. And this is just the paper here. The plastic fusion paper is just stapled on the wood. And I made it 4 feet. They used to be 3 foot because I need to even have a wider background. I also developed new scrims from, stretcher art frames, skinnier skims, different size scrims. I have many scrims that I still use. I have a good collection of scrims. And most of the times I just use stretcher art frames, but sometimes I can use like a picture frame you could buy at like a Target store or a department store. You could buy some of this fusion paper you could buy at an art store, but you could also order this online, or you could buy this on an art store too. Fusion paper. And my big black hard Bs. It's great for creating a dark background. It's also a good way to block too much unwanted daylight, depending on what you're trying to do. It's great for creating a dark environment. Now, I used to use a floor rack. I also took it apart and put it together differently, but now I took apart the wood and I built more still tables, and now I just use the ground stands because I no longer use the Elechrome strobes, and the 8200 Pro strobes. They don't have wires, they just have batteries, and you just have to move it across the floor. So I no longer use this as a rack to hold lights. I took the wood of this and I built still tables. And I'll come to that soon. These are some of the still tables I built. Like this is part of the rack. I decided to build a small table. I could hold like a DVD box. I could hold something. Same thing with this. I built some other still tables. Like this is great for still life. This table here in the middle is great for holding up jewelry. So the many tables I use, I built many kinds of tables with this wood. And these are just angle brackets of wood screws holding the wood together. This used to be a table, but the wood was scratched, so I got rid of the wood. But I kept this, and I'm very glad I did, because these stand up. You don't need to have supports to hold these things up. You just put them on the ground. You can create any kind of table, a white plexus table, a black plexus table, a regular wood table, a foam table. So many ways you can create a table from these two, table studs. That's why if you have a table like this, you might want to hold on to something like this because they're good. They're sturdy. You put like a plexiglass and fire a light for a floating effect for the food when you do food photography or any still photography. So I have my rack. I still use this, but I took these two studs off. I took off this. It works good. I still use it. I hold all my still reflectors. I could use this to hold up a background, but I just use this to hold all my still reflectors. These are my stools. I still use these. Still have them. Created a new office chair from a stool from an office chair where the back kept coming loose. I kept tightening it, so I got rid of the back. You could use this as a low table. You could use this stool up here as a high table, or you could use this stool, the straw stool, as a low table. If you want to like fire down at, food and have shadows, or just still life and have shadows. These are some still tables that I create. I created these because I had bookcases that were falling apart. I decided to save the wood and create something new. So this is good for like a solo product. You'd have a wide still table, a short, a narrow still table. So I have still tables of all kinds of sizes. And this is the Godox. This is great for adding natural light. The LED power is over 3,000, so it's a powerful LED light. And lumens is how you measure, the LED power of a LED light. You could use it as a handheld, you could use it as a stand, and you could just screw like a 3/8 stud stand, and you can, extend the stand if you're light hitting something big. You could also make the light even more powerful by putting on some white, firm print paper. So you have a bigger light when you light paint a car, something big. It also light, uses a background vignette with the doors, not fully open. This is, I'm going to move, let's see. This is the Savage Edge light, where it's a powerful light. You can use the remote, but I don't use it. It operates with two AAA batteries, and it comes with two batteries. And I recommend that you buy the dual battery charger and charge the batteries at the same time. They'll work better and last longer. And if you don't use the batteries, you can also use it as a plug. Also, you could use it with a car charger. You could use it with a two-prong plug or a three-prong plug. So there's many ways you can use this in place of the batteries. And this dual battery charge is a separate purchase, but it's worth getting. The batteries are the LM series. These are powerful batteries that can last a long time. The thing I want to say about this light is it has a coloring rendering index, which it's what CRI stands for, of 95, with the Kelvin temperature of a range between 32,000 to 3,200 to 5,500 K. So you have a good range of Kelvin temperatures with this light. And these are the filters where basically you put these on the LED flashlight. So you control the light when you light paints. And these are the Harold Ross filter with the adapter, where this is the filter, and you have the screws, and this thing, the lowest from the bottom is the adapter. So this, you put the filter on the adapter, and you put the screws, and you screw it in the flashlight so it won't fall off. And you have the left angle and right angle in case you need to change the angle of your LED flashlight. These are all, then I make other filters from PVC feed pipes. And I'll show you what I do with simple tools you can buy at a hardware store. And when you light paints, you want to think about the edges. You want to put some shadow detail. Want to think of the direction of the light. Think of the edges. You want to make sure that you have a full battery when you shoot. You want to make sure the LED lights you bring, that they work, that they come with fresh batteries. You want to have an extra set of fresh batteries for the camera and the LED flashlights. These are filters I made from PCV pipes, where you have duct tape, but then you have a hacksaw which cuts at a 45-degree angle. And this is good for, shaping the light. And then you cover this with black tape so you don't have actual straight light in the photograph. So when you use filters like this, you control the light and you have a better image to work with. And these are the tools that I use to create my own filters. We have the PCV pipes you can buy at any major hardware store. You have a sand block for sanding the rough edges after you use the hacksaw. And then you connect it with duct tape, and then you cover it with black molding tape. So you have a black filter, a black homemade filter. And this hacksaw can cut through anything. These are with the LED lights with the filters attached. You see how you can see some of the definition of some of the light. Some, texture. And this is the LED flashlights without the filters. You know how harsh the light is? And these are all the lenses I use. And I'm going to hold on to all my EF lenses because they're valuable. I still use my EF 85 with either the R6 or R5 for portraits. I'm still going to hold on to my EF 24 and my EF 35 because they can be used for other purposes. And the EF 50 has some macro, close-up filters. You could turn this into the EF 50. You could turn this into a macro lens. And I have a two prime lenses of 600 and RF 800. You can only use aperture 11, but you can change the shutter. You can change ISO. And this is like for faraway birds or faraway wildlife or objects. And then the only zoom lens I have is a 7200, and I did order some filters, and it came up some +1, +2 close-up. So I can maybe turn this into a macro lens with one of the close-up filters. These are, R6, R5. I'm very thankful for the Canon converter because I could still use my EF lenses, but I'm now using mostly RF lenses. I have a YouTube channel, the R5, R6. So I'm going to use my old 7D for backup. I'm thinking about converting one of them to an infrared. It's a site that I recommend, lightpixel.com. And I use the other as a backup with the EF primes. And the 7D could use the old and new Canon batteries, but the 7D can only use one card at a time, unlike the R6, R5. They could use two cards at a time. This is my still life groups. I have a Facebook group. It's growing every day. I have an architect group. Some of these groups are run by myself. Some are run with other people. You're welcome to join either. Then my meetup clubs are down here. And then my business links. And then I'm gonna go to my website. Let's see. This is my website of South Font Art. I specialize in still life of light painting, plexiglass work, natural light. I also like to do cars, but also old-fashioned trucks. This is my car gallery. Here's my old-fashioned truck gallery. This is my newest and latest gallery. Then I have a YouTube channel where so this is where I'll post a recording to this YouTube channel. I have it in play. I'm going to talk about my playlist where I have a landscape section, I have equipment section of still life, I have a light painting webinar, black flex webinar, I have a separate section in Adobe software, and a section on, let's see, white plexiglass. So there's a lot of information on this channel. And I have some ebooks. I have a light painting ebook, black plex table ebook, a white plex table ebook, and a big still life book. If we go over here, it's also for Amazon Kindle. Always email me, or I'm going to go back to the presentation. If you have any questions, you can always email me, or you can, you can contact me at Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. So many ways to get a hold of me. So now I'm going to raise the floor. I'm going to check the chat. I don't think there are any questions. I don't see no questions in the chat. So I'm going to pause the presentation for any questions. Okay, you can ask your question. You can unmute.
Yeah. So I would say like for a couple of years I've been doing photography. I try to do wildlife, some part of architecture and some modeling, but uh, I would see myself as a amateur photographer who's trying to learn things. So if I have to spend some time into still photography, what would be the starting point and uh, how would I take things and learn? If you could share your thoughts on that, that would be helpful.
Yeah, if you want to start still life, start with something small. Start with one thing, photograph it well, be comfortable with your lights, and then maybe do two things. And you want to try with, the white plex table, try with natural light, try with the black plexiglass. So start with one object,
Mm-hmm.
start with one light, and then I'd recommend adding like silver cards or white cards added light before adding a second light.
Got it.
Keep your subject simple and then get more complicated.
Sure. Thank you.
If there are my questions, what I'll do is I'll stop sharing, and I will post a recording to the meetup clubs and in my YouTube channel. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Michael.